Oh dear, oh dear. Donald Trump and his allies are seeking to use the assassination of Charlie Kirk to accelerate their plans to destroy democracy, destroy the opposition, and build an overtly authoritarian state. Now, whether they succeed or not isn't certain, but it is clearly their plan, going even further than the regime in Hungary, which is a blueprint for the international far right, where Viktor Orban has destroyed democracy in a meaningful sense. Remember when the far right claimed to be champions of free speech? Yeah, this was a lie. We said it was a lie, and we were right. It is always the case, has always been the case that it's a lie. It's a nonsense, a ruse to protect hateful, incendiary speech against minorities from even being challenged, because they would portray even verbal pushback against such speech as an attack on free speech. Now, a couple of weeks before Trump became president on a far more extreme platform than his first term, I warned about what would happen if there was a big, this is what I wrote, what would happen if there was a big crisis during his presidency, such as a big terrorist attack or turbulent protests, noting his desire in his first term to send in the military after Black Lives Matter protests erupted after the police murder of George Floyd was overturned at the time against his wishes. That this time, given he had more power and given he was more extreme, that wouldn't be the case. In other words, what I was setting out was my view that his administration would use a pretext of some description. They would wait for a pretext, some sort of crisis incident to crack down on democracy. Now, the police already made clear that the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk was acting on his own, but the US right are claiming that he has been radicalized by a vast network which must be destroyed, and that means their political opposition. And when I say the US right, the US far right, they're in charge. They run the country. On Tuesday night, US Vice President J.D. Vance hosted Charlie Kirk's podcast, a truly bizarre spectacle in its own right. One of his guests was Stephen Miller, one of Donald Trump's key advisors, who has a history of promoting overtly white nationalist politics. Let's hear what Miller said.
You know, what emotions I'm feeling right now, this is something people say. I mean, you kind of know the answer. There's incredible sadness, but there's incredible anger. And the thing about anger is that unfocused anger or blind rage is not a productive emotion.
Right.
But focused anger, righteous anger, directed for a just cause is one of the most important agents of change in human history.
Charlie showed that. Amen.
And we are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. So let me explain a little bit what that means. So,
You've got 30 seconds, so be quick, Stephen.
The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence, it is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
Thank you, Stephen. Don't go away. I'll be joined by a guest of friends just in a few seconds.
What he does here is combine a whole host of different claims and phenomena. It is striking he describes organized doxing campaigns, that is, campaigns to reveal the identities of political opponents online, and given that's what the right is currently doing to those who say things about Charlie Kirk which they do not approve of. But the networks they describe, mark my words, will range from mainstream liberal and frankly impotent campaigns to the organized left in the United States. That is clear from everything that all of these people are saying. Indeed, listen to what Stephen Miller said on Fox News a few weeks ago before the murder of Charlie Kirk.
Look, we discussed this last time I was on your show. The Democrat Party does not fight for, care about, or represent American citizens. It is an entity devoted exclusively to the defense of hardened criminals, gangbangers, and illegal alien killers and terrorists.
What did he say there? He said the Democratic Party is not a political party. It is a domestic extremist organization. That's the sort of language dictators use when they want to shut a political party down. I mean, I don't really need to unpack that any further, do I? That's just a fact. Let's listen to what else J.D. Vance said in the podcast.
And while our side of the aisle certainly has its crazies, it is a statistical fact that most of the lunatics in American politics today are proud members of the far left.
This is a lie. It's a straightforward, unambiguous lie. Statistically speaking, right-wing violence is far, far greater than left-wing violence. Excluding 9/11, given there were 3,000 murders in one go there, the Cato Institute finds that since 1975, there have been 391 murders motivated by right-wing ideology compared to 61 because of left-wing ideology. In recent years, there have been escalating far-right terrorist attacks on a synagogue, for example, a church, a supermarket targeting black people. There was nothing equivalent in scale coming from the left at all. And indeed, we've seen, for example, with the attacks, the attempted assassinations of Donald Trump, neither of the would-be assassins were left-wing. This is all a lie being used to justify a far-right crackdown on anything deemed left-wing. And they use that in an all-encompassing term. But they are coming after the left, no question about that. Indeed, Trump also made this clear on Fox News.
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem. And they're vicious and they're horrible and they're politically savvy. Although they want men and women sports, they want transgender for everyone, they want open borders.
So he's saying there that it's only those deemed left-wing who he deems a violent threat he's worried about. Because he's saying those who are radicalized on the right have legitimate concerns. That's what he's saying. Concerns that are valid. And it's the left who, that's all he cares about. Even though, again, the statistical evidence shows that far more violence comes from the right. But he doesn't care about that violence, does he? Because those are his people. Now, this is all crucial context when we listen to J.D. Vance's other comments on that podcast.
Of course, we have to make sure that the killer is brought to justice. And importantly, we have to talk about this incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism that has grown up over the last few years. And I believe is part of the reason why Charlie was killed by an assassin's bullet. We're going to talk about how to dismantle that and how to bring real unity that can only come when we tell the truth and everybody knows that they can speak their mind about the issues of the day without being cut down by a murderer's gun.
The plan there is to dismantle anything that the Trump administration deems to be left-wing. He's talking about dismantling. What's he talking about dismantling? There's not actually some big left-wing terror network. Doesn't exist. What they're going to say is that a whole range of organizations, ranging from liberal to the left, are radicalizing people into violence, and therefore they need to be dismantled. That's where we're going here. Indeed, both J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have announced they will target George Soros' Open Society foundations. We should note that George Soros is the bête noire of the Hungarian regime, which demonized the Hungarian-born financier as a sinister Jewish puppet master behind the opposition. And that was a crucial element in terms of that demonization of how the Hungarian regime shut down democracy. Listen now to what Trump says here.
Do you plan on designating Antifa finally a domestic terror organization?
Well, it's something I would do, yeah. If I have support from the people back here, I think we'd start with Pam, I think. But I would, if you give me, I would do that 100%, and others also. But
well, Antifa doesn't exist. It doesn't exist as an organization. It's just a label denoting groups or people with an anti-fascist orientation. It means anti-fascist. It means anti-fascism. This is just a pretext for a broad-based crackdown on anything the administration labels as Antifa or somehow supportive of Antifa. Indeed, you can hear how far that crackdown is intended to go.
you can see they're professional agitators. I had one the other night. I had 4 the other night, all in one group, total phonies. I started to scream when I got into a restaurant, oh, you know, something with Palestine. And I said, well, I'm doing a great job for peace in the Middle East. I should get lots of awards for that, right? With the Abraham Accords and everything else. But a woman just stood up and started screaming. And she got booed out of the place, too. The people, there were a lot of people in the restaurant. I went there to show how safe, and it was safe. I mean, the woman is just a mouthpiece. All she was a paid agitator. And you have a lot of them. And I've asked Pam to look into that in terms of RICO, bringing RICO cases against it, criminal RICO. because they should be put in jail. What they're doing to this country is really subversive. Yeah.
So what's he saying here? Anyone heckling a Republican politician, anyone heckling Donald Trump will get sent to prison? Not really pretending that the First Amendment exists anymore, are they? Donald Trump references here Pam Bondi. She's the Attorney General. Let's listen to what she said.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
This is quite something, isn't it? The right spent years saying there was no such thing as hate speech, portraying it as a cynical left-wing ploy to shut down their freedom of speech. But now they're not only using hate speech as a term, they're using it as a catch-all term for criticism from their political opponents. Hate speech now doesn't mean, for example, whipping up racist hatred against minorities with all the violent consequences that actually objectively has. It means saying things which are critical of those in power. I'll prove my point very shortly. I just want to quote something someone once said. Let me just quote it. Hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech, and all of it is protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free. That was Charlie Kirk tweeting on the 3rd of May, 2024. Let's also remember, of course, how J.D. Vance went to Europe 6 months ago to lecture the continent on free speech. Do you remember that? By hate speech, the administration clearly means being scrutinized. Listen to Donald Trump here talking to an ABC reporter.
And what do you make Pam Bondi saying she's going to go after hate speech? Is that, I mean, a lot of your allies say hate speech is free speech.
She'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC. Well, ABC paid me $16 million recently for a form of hate speech, right? Your company paid me $16 million for a form of hate speech. So maybe they'll have to go after you.
No subtlety here, is there? Trump is openly talking about using a crackdown on what is described as hate speech, by which he means things said about him he doesn't like, to shut down those media outlets. I mean, that's what he's menacing them with. He's menacing them with a legal crackdown for saying things about him he objects to. This is, of course, a straightforward dictatorship. That's what they're planning. Let's listen to this other contribution from the Attorney General.
That's horrific. It's free speech, but you shouldn't be employed anywhere if you're going to say that. And employers, you have an obligation to get rid of people. You need to look at people who are saying horrible things, and they shouldn't be working with you. Businesses cannot discriminate. If you want to go in and print posters with Charlie's pictures on them for a vigil, you have to let them do that. We can prosecute you for that. I have Harmeet Dillon right now in our civil rights unit looking at that immediately, that Office Depot had done that. We're looking at that.
What happened to cancel culture, guys? She's proposing here a state-endorsed mass sacking of people expressing political opinions the state doesn't like. That actually is cancel culture. Nothing like that existed. You know, when they were talking about cancel culture before, you didn't have the Attorney General of the United States calling for the mass sacking of people with right-wing opinions. That never happened. That's way beyond anything. They were talking about a kind of cultural phenomenon where people who said hateful things, for example, would then face employment. You know, they'd lose their jobs. Now, as it happens, I don't believe that that kind of approach as a general rule is obviously how we deal with racism and hatred and all the rest of it. Although, you know, the point is here, there is a difference, a distinct difference between, you know, people being fired for saying hateful things about minorities and the state advocating the mass sacking of people for, including for political opinions, because people might go, well, some of these people were dancing on the grave of Charlie Kirk, and that really is beyond the line. But it doesn't just include that. It includes people who condemned the murder of Charlie Kirk, but then condemned his political opinions as well. That is simply expressing an opinion which they do not like. It's very clear what's happening here. Donald Trump is the head of a far-right administration brimming with far-right ideologues who want to crush democracy, crush dissent, and forge an overtly authoritarian state. There was always going to be a scenario where there would be some sort of crisis or incident of some description to accelerate the plans they already have. And they were already doing their best to shred democracy. With all its flaws, America is a democracy which is rigged in favor of plutocrats and millionaires and billionaires, the sorts of people like Donald Trump, the people who fund Donald Trump. But this is what's happening now. And with every coming incident or event, they're going to accelerate those plans even further. Now, what does that mean, for example, for the midterm elections? I do not believe they're going to end up being free or fair elections. The Democrats, alas, are led by impotent, useless leaders who have no fight, and it falls to the US left to fight back instead. The likes, for example, of Zoran Mamdani, who's standing to become Democratic mayor of New York. My concern is Trump already has his sights on Mamdani. He's threatening, for example, to cut off funds to New York if he's elected, and indeed to take over the city directly. No hyperbole is required here. The threat of far-right dictatorship hangs over the United States, and time is running out. Please like and subscribe. Help us take on this, far-right menace, as well as, of course, a far-right administration which is bankrolling genocide. At patreon.com/OwenJones84. We don't, all the work that we do is because of you. We're not funded by these far-right billionaires, clearly. I'm finishing my book at the moment called The Fall of the West. Need to get that finished before the West just falls completely. There's a chapter on the rise of the far right and other things. So I will get that done and then focus back on the video project, but I need to get that done. Also have a documentary coming up on Palestine very soon. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts and comments, share the video. I'll speak to you in a bit.